At one point, I watered down my brand and made it more digestible, more friendly, less edgy because I was too afraid to offend people. And guess what? A lot of people just stopped paying attention to the content that I was posting, the offers I was putting out, and a lot of things just stopped working. This episode is for the CEO who knows that they've grown, but their content still sounds like somebody they've outgrown 2 years ago. I want to take you back to the moment when I started censoring my own voice to be more relatable, to be more, I guess, palatable. That's the word that a lot of people use in the coaching industry. And I was really, really, really afraid to offend people. That was back in 2020, 2023. For some reason, decided that everybody's so soft and people would get so easily offended that I was just like, I don't even know how to talk to a lot of people anymore because there were so many people who they would literally start a fight in the comments over anything. They would be offended by every single little thing. And I'm not going to use any kind of offensive language or any foul language in this episode. But yeah, I stopped feeling social media and especially Facebook for a very long time. In fact, there have been months when I didn't post at all. Like, I remember there was a month, I think around 2021 or 2022. And I looked at my overall analytics and I scrolled through the posts that I published, and it was like one or two posts. And I thought to myself, wow, what happened? Keep in mind, Facebook has always been my main platform. That's where I've made the most money, attracted the most clients, built my brand. It's still one of my main platforms, right? But it just stopped feeling the same. And I told myself I was being clear, I was being strategic, and I was posting on multiple different platforms. Let's put it that way. Just because I wasn't posting on Facebook, I was still posting on Instagram. I was even posting on TikTok at some point. And I was just like, I think I'm clear. I think I'm being strategic, but being slightly edgy and confrontational is also a lot more strategic than being palatable, right? Than being digestive, than being relatable. Now, here's what happens when your brand becomes too digestible and too nice, too polite. It essentially stops making people feel anything. And when people don't feel anything, when they read your content, when they watch your videos, when they listen to your podcast, if it doesn't evoke any kind of feeling, then they're just, one, not paying attention. They scroll right past that piece of content. And number two, they're obviously not going to buy anything. People buy when they are in a certain state of mind. They buy when you make them cry, for example. When you post something that hits them right to the core, when your content is emotional, and again, it doesn't have to be political or religious because a lot of the times when people think about the content that's confrontational or edgy, they immediately think, oh, do I need to be talking about politics? Do I need to be talking about religion? I'm so scared of that. Now, this is something that you can talk about, you can discuss the political matters, but I wouldn't let your brand become all about that because I've seen some people let their entire brand go and they would just focus on the elections and they would just talk about the political candidates and that's all they are. And I've seen a couple of people that did that. Now, unless you're an actual journalist, what the hell are you even doing? I've seen a couple of people, I'm never going to mention any names, but I've seen some people who I've learned from them, I've bought from them, and then all I saw was back in 2020 and even in 2024 as well. They just post about the politics. And I'm like, what are you doing with your life? And it's such a shame for me personally to look at them and be like, man, they had such great content. They've been such good business owners, in my opinion. And then they just let that all slide. But that aside, politics and religion is not the most important thing that you get to talk about through your content. In fact, if you don't want to talk about that at all, don't. I almost never talk about it unless there's something in the media or in the pop culture, even though that's not always politics. I do like to bring up pop culture a little bit. I do love to bring some events. I do like to talk about, for example, there have been some marketers that would talk about the Oscars. They would talk about Squid Game finale. They would talk about different series. Anything that's kind of mainstream, you can bring into your business and give that piece of content your own spin. Because here's what's also happening. Every single time you become a little bit more digestible, when you become a little bit more polite and like, hey, let me invite you for a cup of tea, let's hang out or whatever, and you're posting this cutesy content, people do like it. When you post about your dog or your kids, which, by the way, I just gonna say don't use your kids in your content because a lot of people are so weird these days. If you know, you know. The content that gets you really high engagement, a lot of the times ends up being the content that brings you the lowest amount of sales. Now, let me give you an example. I posted about a big milestone recently, and that milestone didn't include any financial statements or anything like this. This milestone was simply my YouTube channel getting an award. And I posted about it. I was like, okay, let me do a little humble brag for a bit. That post didn't translate to any sales direct. Now, I emailed my list, on the contrary, my small but mighty email list, and I sold 2 strategy sessions without even trying. So that just goes to show, first of all, not every single high engagement social media post is going to bring you sales, because sometimes people think that, oh my gosh, I just got 100 likes, or we judge other business owners by the likes. I know I actually used to do that. I would look at some big business owner, like I know they have multi 7 or 8 figure business, but then I look at their engagement and I would be like, why is it so low? What is happening here? Now I look at it from a completely different perspective, because I know a lot of people have the invisible sales machines installed, they have their email list, they have their events, they have ads going on. So don't expect high engagement posts to bring you a lot of sales just because it's cute. And also, here's something that I will say. Speaking of high engagement, speaking of virality, this is the reason why a lot of the brands don't like to go viral, because it hurts the sales in general. Because sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to go viral, I'm going to have a video with 1 million views and it's going to solve all of my problems. I actually used to think that way as well. I've seen some people go viral. Now, it only will work if the right video goes viral, but that's just you playing poker, right? That's just you waiting for something to hit to pull out the best deck of cards and whatever, right? I'm no poker expert, but a viral post, just like a high engagement post, is not the most important part of your strategy. Like, sure, it's cool to look at, like, oh, hey, look, I have so much engagement, blah, 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 blah. But posts that I've seen in my business that gets the most amount of sales, inquiries, leads, people asking me about how they can work with me, it's always through some random post that didn't get a lot of engagement, but for some reason, or for multiple reasons, it hits the person right into their emotions. And they either related to the post, or they saw a better vision for themselves. They saw maybe what I saw for them through that post, or they got so pissed at themselves that they're like, I'm just so tired. I'm so over my own crap. Let's work together. And that's what happens a lot of the times when you publish a piece of content that's really cute and it appeals to the masses. It doesn't hit anybody. It just appeals to a large group of people. And everybody's like, yeah, sure, that's great. Oh, I love it. And they drop all these generic pieces of comments, and then they don't take any action and they forget the piece of content. And here's one thing that I also want to say is, you know how sometimes people say, oh, you need to write your content like you're talking to a 5-year-old. Listen, I wholeheartedly disagree with this. I used to think that way. And then I realized, wait a second, I don't want to work with people who have a mind or brain of a 5-year-old. That doesn't seem appealing to me at all. I want to attract people who are smart. I want to attract people who are, as they call them, self-starters. I want to attract people who are ambitious. They know they deserve more and they're action takers. They're implementing right away, right? I don't want to work with people with the mind of a 5-year-old. That doesn't seem like fun at all. I mean, sure, working with kids is fun, but working with an adult who thinks like a kid, no, not really, not in my opinion. Now, to circle back the conversation into the cost of being safe, because that's how a lot of business owners are playing the game. They're playing it way too safe. And I was doing this for a very long period of time as well. Now, keep in mind, I started in business and I was very shy, very introverted. And then I kind of started finding my edge because I, as a person in general, I have always been a little bit edgy, I guess. That's probably the proper word to say that. A little bit confrontational a lot of the times. I'm always opinionated. And here's something that I realized is you can't create loyalty when your content is forgettable. Because how many times do you scroll through social media and when you log out, let's say by the end of the day, what content do you actually remember? I'm pretty sure that's not a lot of pieces of content to remember, especially the content that's written. So if you go on Facebook and if you are in the coaching industry, you know there's a lot of coaches that post those long form pieces of content that go on for days, right? And then what do you actually remember? The only pieces of content that you're going to remember is one that made you feel something, whether negative or positive. That's what you get to do with your content as well. You get to evoke some sort of emotion. And sometimes the negative emotion makes people act faster. Because the biggest fear comes from a lot of business owners, and they say, oh, I just don't want to piss my audience off. I just don't want to offend people. Oh, like I already have a small audience. What if half of them leave? Well, what if only 10% of them leave, and then you attract a whole another group of people who are more similar to you and that agree with you, or maybe even if they get pissed at something you say, but they still feel like, man, this girl really pissed me off, but there's really something about it. Maybe I should work with her. And sometimes I would look at somebody and I'm like, man, this makes me so pissed, but I know she gets results. So I would work with somebody like that personally. So there's one thing that you shouldn't lose with your content when you are showing up online is that polarity, because there's always going to be two different opinions on the same topic. There's always going to be people who are going to disagree with you. And think about it, not to bring up politics again, but I guess I'm going to bring up politics again. Every single big political leader, whether you love him or hate him, again, polarity, they're always going to piss somebody off. And especially when you grow a bigger audience, even if you have 10,000 people, I'm willing to bet there's somebody that really despises you or somebody who really disagrees with you, but they still follow your every step, because there's always going to be lurkers and stalkers. Sometimes people will lurk out of curiosity, even when they are not following you. This is the funniest thing to me, when somebody is like, oh, I hate you so much, but I'm still gonna watch every step of yours. Yeah, that's when you know you're kind of getting people addicted to you despite them experiencing negative feelings towards you. Now, what I do want to say is I'm not saying to you to, on purpose, piss people off. But if you have an opinion that you really want to voice, but you just feel a little bit scared, because we all have those kinds of opinions. Now, it has to be relevant to your business, maybe your personality, maybe the line of work that you do. It doesn't have to be around politics or anything crazy like that, but you have to voice it. You have to have the guts to say it, because what's the worst that can happen? That's always what I ask myself. What's the worst that can happen? A couple people unfriend me. A couple people say something not nice. A couple people say, oh, like, how dare you say that? So what? All the big leaders have haters. And if you want to be the big leader, you are going to have haters. That's just inevitable. It's going to happen regardless. The question, is it going to happen sooner or is it going to happen later? Or is it never going to happen and you're forever going to stay palatable, or you're forever going to stay digestible and you're forever going to have all those people that say, oh, you're doing amazing, sweetie, and then they never buy? You have to make people feel something when they consume your content. You have to make people either cry, smile, laugh. Recently, for example, I shared a story from high school days. Okay, so I've had this Hebrew teacher that clearly didn't like me and didn't figure out that I had a lot of knowledge, that I knew Hebrew really freaking well. And he dared to give me a 9 out of 10 grade versus my best friend at the time who got a 10, but she was doing a different test. She was completing a different test because she was just getting started in Hebrew. And I'm like, how dare you give me a 9 and give her a 10, when if somebody from Israel were to come in and they would just be like, oh, can somebody like speak up? and you would ask her to speak up, she would not say a single freaking thing. And I would give a whole speech. Anyway, so that was one of my stories that I recently shared that kind of put me as the villain. I was so pissed. I still remember that day. I remember when I came home and I told my mom what happened. She was like, "Why are you so pissed? What's wrong?" I'm like, that dude gave me a 9 and not a 10. And I'm an overachiever. I'm a type A personality, Capricorn. If you don't know me, that's like I do everything according to the order in that sense. And I have always been an overachiever. If there is a goal, if there is a task, like it has to be done, right? And so I was like, how dare he give me a lower grade? Eventually, I did get a 10 my final year of high school. And that story got so noticed. Like, my email list was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that you, first of all, some people didn't realize I knew Hebrew. Other people were just, that story was so memorable. And even when I had a client call this week, as I'm recording this podcast episode, my client brought it up and she was like, that story was so good. And it was like days after I posted that story. So that's what gets memorable. Your confrontational takes on some sort of subject. For example, if you talk about AI, and maybe you hate AI, maybe you don't like it, maybe you still use it, but you still kind of hate it, talk about it. Anything that makes you even angry, that's another thing that you can bring up in your content. Because here's the deal, when you lose your edge, when you lose that little bit of your personality that you for some reason try to hide behind being relatable, behind being good or trying to be a good person. And look, I'm a good person, at least I consider myself so, but there's still something that I can say that's going to rub people the wrong way. And that's totally fine because when you, first of all, when you share your story, when you share anything, any of your opinions, any of your core values, and listen, core values is one of the most important things any company and any business owner is going to have. Every single company that you know, Apple, Google, Microsoft, they all have their own core values. They may not voice them, but every single corporate company has core values. And if you just look it up online, you're going to see. And then you're going to be like, okay, I don't know if I relate to all of them, but you're still going to buy from a lot of them. But in general, you are going to relate, of course, more to the people who do share the same core values as you, but you've got to share something that's going to make people think. You've got to talk about the topics that everybody else is scared to talk about. You've got to bring things up that's going to piss people off. For example, the other day I did a post on Facebook after a conversation that I had with a friend, after her telling me how she was treated by one of the clients she's had. I did a post on Facebook that said something like this: good morning to everyone, but coaches who pay $5 an hour to their contractors and treat them like full-time employees. And that got a lot of conversations, that had some messages, that stirred up a whole conversation, and some people laughed and a lot of people related. Now, will the coaches who do that kind of stuff unfriend me? They probably already did. I'm still going to voice the opinions that are a little bit edgy, and this works the best when it's something very specific like this. Now, if I were to say, oh, like, I hate using AI, AI is the evil, that's not going to make people feel anything. But when you bring something up as specific as this, when you call out the behavior, because here's the thing, I didn't put anybody on blast. I didn't call anyone's names. I didn't, say like, oh, this and this person is bad, they're doing this. No, I just called out a behavior that is common, unfortunately, in the coaching industry. And a lot of people were like, oh, yeah, yep, I've seen this happen multiple times. So if you want to have a memorable and remarkable brand, if you want to sign clients left and right, as they say, you do want to position your brand as somebody who is memorable. And if you are digestible, if you are somebody who says the most basic thing and then nothing too emotional, you're just playing it safe, you're just on the highway, you're just going straight, you're not bringing any opinions, you're not voicing any of your controversial opinions, then it's just going to stay safe. And as they say, you have to get out of your comfort zone. And it's so freaking cliche, but it is so true. You have to get uncomfortable by sharing the truth that you believe to be able to filter out through your audience. Because if you have 1,000 people and everybody agrees with you, that's also kind of a problem. And here's one thing that I will leave you with in this episode is this. If your content feels safe, it's probably not saying anything worth remembering. So really think about that next time you're publishing something. So with that said, remember who the heck you are. Remember who you are as a person outside of your business. Think about all of the opinions that you do have about specific topics in your industry, maybe about the human behavior, the character of certain people, and think about how you can infuse that through your content, how you can infuse that through your storytelling, how you can infuse more of your personality, whether it's hateable or lovable. Because here's the thing, there's always going to be somebody who dislikes what you do, and that's totally fine.